So today we are going to explore the age-old question, why do bad things happen to good people? It's something I've had to come to grips with over the last 20 years. I'm sure that there's things that you've had to deal with. I'll get into my personal story in a little while, but we're going to examine a portion of scripture, John chapter 21, verses 1 through 7, in order to answer this amazing question. So what we want to do first is put this in context so that you understand where John chapter 21 is in the life and ministry of Jesus. So Jesus has already endured the cross. He has already died and was buried and rose on the third day. Mary and the other women saw Jesus, saw the empty grave, saw the empty tomb. Jesus has already shown himself to the disciples. He's already let Thomas touch his nail-scarred hands. And Jesus has told the disciples through the women, meet me in Tiberias. Now, so that you understand where Tiberias is still today a little town right off of the Sea of Galilee. And so the disciples have been there waiting for him. And then we get to John chapter 21. And I'm going to read verses 1 through 7 so that we can understand these verses and hear them. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. And in this way, he showed himself Simon Peter, Thomas the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. And they said to him, we're going with you. They went out and immediately got into the boat. And that night they caught nothing. Okay, I want to stop there for a little bit because what's going on? I think that Peter, a natural born leader, has kind of said, well, Jesus told us to meet him here. We've met him here. He hasn't gotten here. And, it was a good run. It was an awesome time. We got to meet Jesus. We got to meet God in the flesh. And now it's time to get back to life. And I'm a fisherman. I'm going fishing. And the others go with him. And they catch nothing. Okay, let's keep reading. Verse 4, but when the morning had now come, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. And then Jesus said to them, children, have you any food? And they answered him, no. And verse 6, and he said to them, cast the net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. Now I'm going to stop there because does that sound familiar to you? It should. When he was asking these men to follow him the first time, the exact same scenario had happened. They had been out all night fishing. They had caught nothing. And Jesus told them to cast the net on the other side of the ship. And just like the first time, they caught tons of fish. Okay, let's keep reading. So they cast, and now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. Verse 7, therefore, the disciple whom Jesus loved, who is that? That's John. We're reading in the book of John. I always thought that was cute. Said to Peter, it is the Lord. So they recognized that it's him. Now, when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garments, for he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. Okay. So what we will learn is that they share a meal with Jesus and that we learn that the net did not break. Now that's a difference, which is interesting from the first time when Jesus called them as disciples. The net didn't break. The first time it was so full of fish that the net did break. But we'll get into that at the very end of this video because it is significant. So we do need to look at the problem. They didn't catch any fish that night. So, my friends, I think that is significant. How many times in your life have you not caught any fish? How many times in your life have you experienced a problem? I bet you there's people right here, right now, experiencing problems in your life. Now, we know through the book of Job and throughout the Bible that God has to allow problems in our life, right? That's sometimes a hard pill to swallow. I imagine there are problems in your life that were quite significant, and you're sitting there thinking right now, wait a cotton picking minute. God allowed that to happen? Yeah, he did. And I'm going to go through 6 reasons why sometimes God allows bad things to happen to good people. So, first of all, my friends, I want us to realize that good things happen through bad situations for believers. Just because it's a bad situation doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Think about the last time you went to the dentist. We go to the dentist, and most likely it's not a walk in the park. At least they're going to scrape your teeth. There's going to be a little bit of blood from the scraping. It's not going to be fun. And you might have a wonderful dentist and a friendly dental hygienist, but it's still not a pleasant thing. But you leave the dentist with clean teeth that are free of infection. It causes these chompers to stay in your mouth your whole lifetime. It's not a pleasant thing, but yet good comes from it. Well, I am going to go through my 6 reasons why bad things can happen to good people and what God is doing with it and through it. But Joseph said it best way back in Genesis chapter 50 when he said, what the enemy meant for evil, God is going to make good. And I want you all to hear that solidly. Whatever you're going through, if you allow God to work in it and through it, God will make good from it. I don't promise many things, but I will promise you that. Okay, let's get into the 6 reasons. Reason number 1 is that when a bad thing happens, if you search for God in it, he is there. I promise you he's there. And when we actively search for God in our problem, it builds our faith. I've had my own problem, and my biggest problem that I ever experienced in my life brought you to me. I have this ministry today directly because of the worst thing that ever happened to me. That's where God has been in it and through it. I could spend the next 2 hours explaining that, but maybe that's another video. Okay, reason number 2 that bad things happen to good people is for God's justice. God's justice is purely seen when sometimes he allows the bad things to happen. We get to see that God is just. He is going to make things right in a way that no human judge can possibly do it. We need to be patient and watch for God's justice because it'll always be there. Reason number 3, grace. My friends, the definition of grace is getting something we don't deserve. And within our problems, there are gifts that we get when we, again, as of number 1, when we search for God in the problem, we will see gifts all over the place, gifts that are just wrapped up and waiting for us to grab and unwrap and enjoy right there. That is God's grace. The book of James says that every good gift comes from above. And that peace that you experience in the midst of a problem, the laughter you shared with your husband after an argument, the joy in your heart, even when you're in the midst of pain, those are gifts from God himself. So reason number 4 that bad things can happen to good people is his mercy. Mercy is the other side of the coin from grace. mercy is not getting something that we do deserve. My friends, we all deserve hell. But from God's mercy, he reaches down and pulls those of us out who ask to be pulled out. My friends, God saves us. And he saves us even in the midst of our problems, in the midst of our everyday, probably far more than we ever knew possible. There are times, there's that section in the Bible where I believe it's Elijah, and he has a servant, and it might be Elisha. Anyway, he's sleeping in the midst of all of the enemy that is starting to surround him. And his servant is going crazy. And his servant is like, I need to look at what's going on. And he says, oh, but God's army is so much better. And then he prays to God and asks God to open up the eyes of his servant. And then we get to see how the field, yes, is filled with the army of the enemy, but behind them and surrounding them in far greater number are angel armies. Greater is he who is with God than he who is in the world. Alrighty. So reason number 5 is God's love. My friends, God's love, and I've experienced it in my own life. God's love is wrapped around every single tear we shed. Jesus, who is God, walked in our shoes in this life. He has experienced every bit of pain that we could ever experience, emotional, physical, spiritual. He's walked it. He knows it. So when we are in pain, when we are hurt, he wraps his love around us. Don't take that for granted. Reason number 6 is his glory. And this is where my personal story comes in. My friends, when the worst is happening in our life and we stay patient and we persevere and we stay there in God and with God, God's glory gets to shine not only for us, but within us and through us and through our problem. We see that with Lazarus, who God raised from the dead. God got glory because of that horrible situation. My friends, my son was diagnosed with something horrible when he was 8 years old. And my son today wants to go into ministry because of it, not despite it. Because my son has persevered in the midst of trial and trouble and problems. My friends, that is God's glory in action. I'm thinking of a couple friends, Stacy, who is dealing with horrible financial issues and has a smile on her face all the time and is constantly talking about God and his love and grace and mercy and justice like we're talking about. I'm thinking of a friend named Heidi who has been going through horrible physical stuff that no doctor can diagnose for the last 2 years, yet she has joy in the Lord that just explodes. I'm thinking of a friend named Beth and her husband Steve who have dealt with what began, I think, like 3.5 years ago as unexplainable stuff, and it ended up being a rare medical issue. And through God's glory, God is healing Steve. And they have been doing it in the midst of smiling with tears coming down their face. My friends, that is the glory of God. If you are dealing with a trouble, a trial, a health problem, a financial issue, a pain that was put on you by someone else, God is there. God loves you. God is holding you with his love. He is going to show his justice through that situation. I promise you. He is going to show you grace. He is going to show you mercy in the midst of it. Persevere. Let God's glory shine and be patient because God's glory is on its way. So my friends, I told you at the very end, I was going to explain to you about the net. My friends, remember in this story in John chapter 21, that at the very beginning, when Jesus calls those fishermen to ministry, the fish are so much that the net breaks. This time the net did not break because Jesus is our net. Persevere. The net is holding you in the palm of his hand and no one can take you from Jesus's hand. My friends, search for him in your problem. Know that there will be justice in the situation. Look for the gifts, the grace that he is giving you. Know that there is mercy in the situation for you, and let God hold you in the midst of your tears and watch for his glory, because he's going to do something in your day that if he told you, you wouldn't believe. And my friends, that's a Bible verse, Habakkuk 1:5. Go look it up. So my friends, I am energized to go through my day knowing my problem and knowing these 6 things, and I want you to too. My friends, I love you so much. And I am so excited about what God's doing in my life and in your life. Because why? Because God's got this, and that's a promise. I love you, friends.